founder of Get Smarter, which is an online education company that has educated over 200,000 working professionals from 154 countries around the world, and partners with universities like Harvard, Cambridge, MIT, Oxford, LSE, and Stanford. Get Smarter sold to NASDAQ listed 2U in 2017, and Rob is also the founding board member of Ingenie, Africa's first ed tech incubator, and executive director of Hubble Studios, which is an education technology agency in Cape Town. And he's also an advisor to a number of online education companies in Africa and abroad. He is also the founding trustee of Ibodi Trust, which is a bold project created, a bold project to create a new blueprint for delivering high quality, affordable education to students throughout South Africa who needs it most. So, if you're interested in doing things before global pandemics hit, I'm sure he'll give you a little bit of insight. He's your second keynote speaker. Please make him feel welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mr. Robert Paddock.
Thank you for that very, very warm introduction. And ladies and gents, thank you so much for having me today. It's a real pleasure to talk to you about starting a business in South Africa and serving a global audience, which I truly believe is one of our biggest opportunities that we have on the continent, and not one that we are taking enough advantage of. So I want to ask you to indulge me a little bit. I want to tell you my story, some of the businesses I've been involved in, and hopefully provide some inspiration and directionality for future work in this country. All right. Starting a business in South Africa, serving a global audience. I'm going to skip straight past the quick introduction, and then I want to talk about the businesses that we've started, how they came to be, and how we came to serve a global audience. So my brother Sam and I started a business called Get Smarter in 2007. It's an online education company working with top universities globally to service working professionals with short courses. Now, the focus of these short courses is very specifically around industry-specific skills. We heard in the keynote before just what a problem it is in terms of getting suitably qualified and adequately skilled individuals into the workforce. And one of the things we recognized very early on is that you can no longer just rely on your undergraduate or postgraduate studies to carry you through for the full course of your professional career. We now need to move into a place, and in fact this has been true for the last 15 years, where we constantly need to learn, unlearn, and relearn throughout our lives. And so we need to think very differently about our educational arc throughout our professional careers. And one of the other things we recognized is that the world of employment still highly values university brands as signals for competence. Now, this I'm not necessarily saying is correct. I think that we've got a lot of work to do on the employment front and the recruitment front to get a more sophisticated mechanism for ascertaining skills. But that's a whole nother conversation. For now, one of the things that's absolutely clear is that getting certified from top institutions is a strong signal to the world of work and potential employers for your capability set. And so we recognized very early on that we need to work with top institutions in regions in order to certify working professionals in industry-specific skills. So we started in Cape Town, South Africa, working with the University of Cape Town. And that was back in 2007. And back then, kind of e-learning was this slightly kind of dirty word. It was something that happened kind of in corporate, like e-learning, asynchronous. Oh, it's not that great. And so we had a heck of a lot of convincing to do back then. But we asked them, just let us do a pilot. One pilot, no contractual terms beyond the first pilot. If we make a success of it, excellent, we can talk contract again. But all we're asking for is a pilot. It was myself, my brother, mother, father, and quite literally one marketing executive. And we built the online campus, we built the entire program, we marketed the program, we administered the students for the university, we offered the academics, we even printed the certificates at the end of the program. So we became a full turnkey solution for our university partners. And what happened off that first program was absolutely life-changing for us. We knew we needed to get about 30 students to break even. We ended up getting 290 students across South Africa, and really that was the start of the Get Smarter story. From there, we continued to grow our partnership with the University of Cape Town. We then started a partnership with the University of Witwatersrand as well as the University of Stellenbosch, and really focusing on these top institutional brands within South Africa, largely servicing South African and Southern African students. over time, we started realizing that we were actually achieving some fairly phenomenal results in the space. We were consistently achieving 92% graduation rates on these programs, which is completely unprecedented in the world of open enrollment online programs, and we were delivering superior, very strong commercial returns for our university partners. And you may or may not remember around 2012, there was this kind of MOOC phenomenon, the massive open online courses, the Coursera's, the edX's, and so on. And the idea was that education technology was fundamentally going to democratize education. It was going to open up these big old institutions, and really over time, the university would become obsolete, and it's all just about access to content. And one of the things that we found out in no uncertain terms off the back of the MOOC experiment was that access to content doesn't constitute a high-quality learning experience. Learning is actually fundamentally an emotional process on top of which we build cognitive and intellectual skills. And I'm a technology fan, by the way, but technology is no substitute for the role of humans in the learning process. You can use technology to augment the role of humans. You can deal with all manners of inefficiencies with technology, but fundamentally learning is always about a sense of connection. It's about a sense of community. It's about an emotional sense of security that allows you to take these intellectual leaps. What's called the zone of proximal development is very much enabled by the emotional underpinning. And humans provide the most comprehensive mechanism for creating that sort of and fostering that sort of environment. So we built what we call a high-touch and socially rich approach to online education, where learners are immediately put into small tutorial groups. They are supported intimately with the support of expert tutors. They've got mentors who come from a counseling and psychology background who are constantly staying in touch with them and keeping them on track in terms of pastoral care and so much more. And the combination of these factors result in these very high completion rates. So we, in about 2013, started realizing, jeepers, like what's happening with the MOOCs is kind of not working. What we're doing does seem to be working. Maybe we haven't set our sights high enough. Maybe we could actually be working with top universities internationally and servicing a global audience. And as we started looking at this more, we realized, well, jeepers, in South Africa, we've actually got some very significant advantages. One of those advantages is that we, in terms of time zone, we're situated smack bang in the middle of most time zones. You add 3 or 4 hours on the front end of the day and the back end of the day, and we can service and at least catch the working day of the vast majority of the world. That's a pretty big advantage. Secondly, in terms of being English medium, we're actually able to, again, service and you know, English being the lingua franca of a huge portion of the world of work, we're able to service a large portion of the world's population, English-speaking population, again, from South Africa. In addition to that, we have a cost base that, at least in the ed tech industry, is typically about 3 to 5 times cheaper than the equivalent skills and experience in the US or the UK. That's a massive advantage, guys. Like, huge, and one that we cannot overstate the impact that can have on your business. So we started kind of putting all that together, and then we realized, okay, so those are all the advantages. One of the disadvantages is that we're all the way down on the tip of Africa. And when we cold call someone at Harvard University, they say, huh? Like, South Africa, but that's where I go for safaris and that sort of thing. So it's not obvious to people sitting in other parts of the world just what we have going on here, just the depth of skill that we have here, and the affordable rates and so on. So very quickly we realized we need to get on a plane, and we need to go live on a plane for a few years, and that's exactly what I did. Lived on a plane quite literally for the next 4 or 5 years, and was just constantly in the space and in the place of our university partners, ultimately culminating in a relationship with Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We had an MIT course in fintech that we launched in 2015, and we had 2,900 students from 130 countries around the world, each paying $2,900. And it again changed our business overnight. We had to triple our staff complement, went to 24/7 operations. Hectic, like very fun and an amazing experience, but jeepers, guys, the growth rate's incredibly challenging to manage. But we did it, and that was a successful program, and we then managed to use the momentum from that first successful course to forge partnerships with Harvard University, with Oxford, with Cambridge, with London School of Economics, Stanford, and so many more partners that we currently have today. This activity then really got the attention of a few international players in education, and ultimately resulted in an acquisition from NASDAQ-listed 2U in 2017. that in itself was a wonderful experience, but certainly a major, as Anna mentioned already, a major kind of divergence from your day-to-day activities. So if you are going through an acquisition, guys, really you need to make sure that you've got the capacity and the time to deal with it. In addition to the short course portfolio that we built and the list of partners and so on, one of the reasons that 2U was so interested in buying us was because of the South African story, was because of this incredible talent pool that exists in Cape Town and throughout South Africa, for them to also start tapping into that to service their global clients. And so a lot of what's transpired since the acquisition in 2017 is that team's been built out to, I think, just over 3,500 people now. And that is, again, not just servicing the Get Smarter programs, but 2U degree programs and so much more. And that's an example of a business that's seen the value of the South African advantage and is really investing hugely off the back of that. All right, so that's Get Smarter, lots of fun. Hubble Studios is a business that we started in about 2011. One of the things that was happening at Get Smarter is we were getting a lot of corporate clients that were coming to us and saying, hey, can't you build us an online academy? Can't you build us can't you build a series of simulations for us in order to do internal training and development and so on and so on? We started then off the back of Get Smarter being kind of young and scrappy entrepreneurs. You'll do anything that can generate revenue. And we started doing that work on a fee-for-service basis. So whilst Get Smarter partners with our universities, we take the commercial risk and they get a percentage of the revenue. This business was, we will quote you for work and we will deliver that work and you'll pay us for that work on a fee-for-service basis. So far more of an agency-style model. That business has continued to grow in leaps and bounds. Again, almost exclusively now servicing global partners. So partners such as Harvard, we've been doing a massive project for them. London School of Economics, we have a number of massive international corporate clients, and again, all on a fee-for-service basis. Again, guys, the idea here is keep the hub in South Africa, service a global audience. You need to be on a plane in order to garner the business, but keep your cost base and keep your staff complement in South Africa. Very, very powerful proposition and incredibly difficult for our competitors to compete with. So that business is continuing to grow and watch that space. I then started a business off the back of the Get Smarter acquisition, ended up finishing up my tenure there in 2018 and started a business called the Valencia Institute in 2019. This is a global private online high school, and the idea here was really to take the learnings from building Get Smarter and servicing a global audience with this high-touch, socially rich approach to online education and place that into the high school domain. But at least by my estimation, there was no reason why taking what we'd learned and applying it to this domain, we couldn't create a new category of education, being online high schools quite specifically. That business we started in September of 2019. I like to build things fast. We built the entire school in 4 months. We kind of build the plane while we fly, small team, figuring it out, making it happen. One of the best things about building fast is that you start to get the real feedback loops from your clients. No business plans can ever supplement the value of real-world feedback when you actually say to a client, here's a product, will you pay me for it? That's when the real learning starts. So again, from where we'd started with our idea about Valencia Institute, it is radically evolved since that initial point. This business now, today, I'm thrilled to say, is servicing students in South Africa, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malta, Belgium, UK, US. We are offering a curriculum which is recognized by global universities. We've integrated the UN Sustainable Development Goals into the core curriculum, and we're adding a whole layer of university certificates specifically focused on career skills. And it's a really exciting space, and please do watch this as we move forward. Couple of interesting things that have come up for us. One is that there's a lot of parents for whom a safe and inspiring place for their kids to go to school is a really important part of the value proposition. So we were getting parents saying, love the curriculum, love the high-touch focus, and so on and so on. Do you have somewhere I can drop my kids off during the day? Brilliant. Like, wouldn't have thought of that. And so we've started what we call boutique campuses. So these boutique campuses, students are coming into a physical space every day. It looks very much like a co-working space. They are completing all of their academics online. That is with their online peers who are in different parts of the world. That's with their online teachers who are all over the world. So suddenly from a local hub, you're able to access a global network of expertise, of peers, and so on. But you're doing that all from a safe and inspiring space, which is conveniently located for parents. These schools are typically 60 to 120 students total, so we're very much focusing on small niche schools where we want to know every single student's name, we want to celebrate their individuality, and it's providing a real alternative for students for whom the kind of traditional brick and mortar school environment just hasn't been suitable for them. We've launched something literally 2 weeks ago, which I'm really excited about. One of the other questions that we get from a lot of parents is, hey, love all these other things, but what about sport? And we actually haven't had a good answer to that until now. So we have partnered with St. Stithians, which is a wonderful school up in Johannesburg, and we have launched the 8th school of the St. Stithians College, which is the St. Stithians Online School. That school is a formal collaboration between Valencia Institute and St. Stithians, where we are collaborating not only on the academics, but also on the extracurriculars. So this model, all of the students' academics are taking place online. They are fully fledged members of St. Stithians College, but all of their academics are taking place online, but they've got full access to the facilities, and they can play sport on campus through clubs. Very, very interesting value proposition, and one that we're seeing an immediate uptake from parents and students in the Johannesburg and broader regions. Very excited to announce that we will be launching a University of Cape Town online high school in June of 2021. So the idea here is, in our minds, we kind of have the segmentation between primary school, secondary school, tertiary, post-tertiary, and so on, when in fact it's all just one educational arc from the student's perspective. Why shouldn't you be at high school and already starting to get university credits? Why shouldn't you be in high school and already be starting to take career-specific track education towards skills like cybersecurity professionals, towards skills like UX design professionals, and so on? I don't think that on this continent we have the luxury anymore of thinking that we can just, our job as educators is get students to the next kind of exit point and then let the next institution take responsibility from there. There is a disconnect that is frightening in this. It's not just in this country, it's in many other countries, between secondary school and tertiary, and between tertiary and the needs of the workforce. And so we're working very hard to create more obvious and straight lines between schooling and entry-level job opportunities. So very excited to speak about that more in time. One of the ideas here is that over time, as we start to launch more of these partnerships, these university partnerships for online high schools, that Valencia can actually be a convening force for truly the world's leading university courses, which can stand students in good stead in terms of their employment prospects. All right, and then finally, this is probably the thing that gets me by far the most excited, a project called the Abodi Trust. The Abodi Trust is a bold project to create a new blueprint for educating students throughout South Africa in high quality and affordable education. It's a very, very tall order, guys. We've got a lot of challenges facing our education system, particularly our quintile 1 and 2 schools, and yet if we keep doing what we're doing, we are not going to make it. It's a huge problem. The fact that currently the achievement of the National Senior Certificate, which incidentally only 50% of students who start grade 1 end up actually getting a matric, of those 50% who get that matric, getting a National Senior Certificate in South Africa statistically gives you no better chance of getting a job than not having one at all. Like, that's something that we should be looking at and saying no, like absolutely not. That is a train wreck for this country if we can't get our education system right. And yet we keep just trying to build more schools and trying to educate more teachers and so on, and we haven't taken a step back from the system and said, let's look at this from a system architecture perspective and deconstruct it and reconstruct it for the new needs of the economy and the new needs of society. So the model here is as follows. Students, again, are completing all of their academics online. That is with, sorry, just a side note, one of our biggest challenges in education is that we can't get great teachers to live and work in the areas that need them most. Good teachers get absorbed into the formal Model Cs, into the private school sector and so on, so what ends up happening is that quintile 1 and 2 schools, with some rare exceptions, get left with the lowest performing teachers when 33% of the teachers in the Eastern Cape teaching mathematics at grade 8 level can't pass the same grade level test for which they're teaching for. That's a flippant problem. So we've got issues, and we've got real issues that need new and dynamic responses to solve. So our approach is, well, what if we think differently about how you connect great teachers and learners regardless of where they're both geographically located? So the idea here is that students, you're looking at a picture of students in Mitchell's Plain in an area called Beacon Hill. We've taken a previously unutilized storeroom and turned it into this thriving digital classroom. Students are completing all of their academics online. Again, this is with support from mentors, from teachers who are located all over the country and indeed all over the world. They are connecting with learners from other parts of the world. They're having to collaborate with peers in Australia and other parts of the world, and they're learning skills that are going to be so incredibly valuable to them as they enter the workforce. In addition, they have got a mentor which we refer to as someone who is the number one cheerleader. These are individuals who don't need to be trained teachers. These are the mothers of the community. These are individuals who care deeply, who are empaths, who are there to provide that critical pastoral care, create that emotional safety, create that adult supervision during the day. And guys, the combination here is such an exciting prospect. In terms of our modeling, we're getting this model to the point where we can educate learners reliably with a high level of quality at 25,000 Rand per learner per year. The government is currently spending 19,000 Rand per learner per year, excluding capital expenditure for buildings. Capital expenditure for buildings is typically somewhere between 80 and 120 million Rand per school that can then service 1,000 kids tops. We're saying, we can't afford to do that anymore. We can't keep building schools in the urban peripheries where you can actually get the land. I mean, to give you a sense, guys, in the Western Cape alone, we've got 23,000 new learners who come into the Western Cape every single year. That means we need to build 23 new schools. We've got budget for 4 and realistically end up building 2. So the rest of those learners are getting lost in the system or shoved into already overcrowded classrooms. We need to think differently about what the future of education looks like and what the future of schools look like in this country. So our thinking is micro schools. These are converted houses. These are converted community halls, sports centers, and so on, that are being converted into these thriving digital classrooms that don't need massive capex, where we can use existing infrastructure and we can repurpose it for educational needs. And we have a much, much better chance of actually educating our youth if we start to think differently about this. If you'd like to talk about this project, it is a not-for-profit project. If any of you are interested in putting some money towards it, we'd be hugely grateful. And please do find me on LinkedIn if you're interested in that. With that, ladies and gents, I will leave it there and I think hand over for questions. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, before any questions, a round of applause. Mr. Robert Paddock. Really incredible work you've done. Disrupt, like that's, you just wake up and go, oh, I'm just going to disrupt everything. I love it. Think about it differently. Do we have any questions? Yes, right in front. No.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question relates to the sort of skills that one needs in order to teach.
Just before you can you sort of summarize the question, because I think the guys at the back didn't hear the question.
That's what I was. Yeah. So the question is based on the supply side, i.e., the teaching capabilities and the skills that are needed to teach on these programs with like Harvard and MIT and so on. If you're teaching an MIT cybersecurity course, do we have the requisite skills from tutors in South Africa? And if so, how do we deal with that? We basically had a kind of hybrid approach, and it very much depended on the sophistication of the subject that was being taught. Sometimes our university partners actually had very specific individuals that they wanted us to use, in which case we would build that into the financial model, and we need to make sure that it worked and that the economics could work out for both parties. But what we found fairly consistently was, because the work is remote, we've actually had, jeepers, I'm trying to think of the number of countries we had employees on tutoring from. It was something crazy like 25 countries. But one doesn't just need to think about South Africa as a lower cost base area. There's a number of countries throughout Africa, Eastern Europe, number of countries in the Middle East and East and so on. So it was very much a hybrid approach that we took. I would say that the majority of our tutors, i.e. about 80%, though, were still South African. And I think there's one of the valuable things that we found consistently was that if you're a tutor on an MIT course, even if you're not earning magnificently from a profile perspective, it's very, very powerful for those individuals. So that's just something to consider. Cool.
We've got a couple of questions. Can I move across? So I'll start this side and move across. We've got one there. Over here. Yep. Do you want to tell me?
Cool. So on the first question, I think it was more the fact that my wife was kicking me in the ass and telling me that I was driving her insane and that I was a better human if I was working, so go back and work. So I actually thought I was going to take quite a long time off, and I ended up, I guess it's interesting, you kind of, what's the best way to describe it? I think as humans, we've actually have a need to rub up against things, to challenge ourselves and to kind of find that space of development and growth and so on. And I found that I was atrophying quite quickly by kind of hanging at home. And then I started getting into like Ironman triathlons and like doing all this like long distance stuff. And it's like, what the hell am I doing? You know, like I'm trying to find something to rub up against. And at least by my estimation, with skills and education, I'd much rather apply that energy into solving big education problems. On the second question with Valencia, we set it up internationally. So there's a Jersey holding company, there's an IP and an operating company in the UK, and then there's a stapled shareholding agreement down to South Africa. I think this is something that now the Reserve Bank has actually substantially relaxed, quite literally over the last 2 weeks. But I think it's, one of the challenges actually with the Get Smarter acquisition was the fact that the South African location is a challenge. And the sorts of capital value that you can realize as a result of that is compromised. So that is something for all the positives, and I really do believe strongly in the positives of operating in South Africa. There are some drawbacks great question. Cool.
Okay, next one. You tell me. I'm scared of giving my mic over.
Roberts. So I have a question with regards to the schools that you target. For instance, you spoke a lot about Saint Stithians and how you partnered up with UCT and University of Wits, but you haven't said anything about schools in rural areas and schools in townships, because I believe that that's where there is a high need for such services. And I think that your target market is already a market that can afford to get the skills even outside of your program, right? So I think the biggest focus should be on those schools and how have you tried to get them into the program, and what has the Department of Education, the role that it's played, what's going on with that, and also, that's basically the question I have.
Cool. So we actually have done a lot of work in township areas, and that's the last project I was referring to, which is the Abodi Trust. The idea is that there are different educational solutions that need to be constructed differently for different demographic populations. So as an example, online only is a horrendous solution for students who had previously come from a quintile 1 and 2 school. It doesn't work, guys. I've done a lot of work in this area. You can't just expect that by giving students access to a tablet and internet access, even if you've got all the high quality support and so on behind it, home is not a particularly conducive learning environment. With all the socioeconomic ills that plague those sorts of societies, we need to be very contextually aware in terms of designing an education program that can actually work, which is why this blended learning model for township areas is so much more, we're seeing the efficacy of it as so much stronger. I think that again, when we talk about education in a country like South Africa, we need to get very specific and very granular when we're talking about solutions for different portions of the population. It's not a one-size-fits-all by any stretch. Cool.
Cool.
Hi, Rob. Very interesting model you have going. And I'm also running something that is enterprise education for young children and in underprivileged communities. And I wanted to find out, I saw the Mitchell's Plain concept, and when it comes to resources, how are you coping with that? And I understand you have a social enterprise model running. When it comes to sustainability, how are you dealing with those dynamics?
Absolutely. So the project in Mitchell's Plain is completely a not-for-profit project that's being funded by corporations and high net worth individuals on very much a donation basis. So the idea with the Bodhi project is, or the Bodhi Trust project, is that we've got this cohort of 28 learners that we are refining this approach to education for individuals in township and rural areas, so that we can scale it up at a later stage. The point around scale up is really, really important. Any sort of educational venture, if we're not understanding how we can do quality at scale, we almost shouldn't even start. With that in mind, we are working with the Western Cape Education Department as a formal collaborator on the Bodhi Trust project. The idea is that if we can prove the educational efficacy of this, and if we can prove that we can consistently deliver quality at about 25,000 Rand per learner, we have got a model that the government is willing to explore getting behind. That's where we need to be. I mean, it's been said before that the best use of private money in the education sector is to prove concepts so that the public sector can take them over. It's something like 4 billion Rand gets spent per year on education, on philanthropic spend on education every single year in South Africa, compared to the 80+ billion Rand that's being spent by the government. Like, no individuals, no corporation, no CSI initiatives has the depth of pocket that is required. We have to get government behind these projects, which again is one of the reasons why we actually collaborate with the Western Cape Education Department on this.
Rob, thank you very much. Listen, we are unfortunately out of time. Please give Rob a big round of applause. I hope